tell you something right now. They don't put championship rings on smooth hands. You gotta go earn it.
Third down and 12. Ailsler going for a bunch for Gardner. Lots of pushing. He has it! At the 8-yard line, Rod Gardner.
Which spreads the field a little more. They've been able to find some gaps in the running game with this. Proctor under pressure on the flat. Spiller makes a move. Needs to get the first down.
Watson takes a snap, rolls right, looks into the end zone. Hunter Renfrow caught it! Touchdown! 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 With a second left.
Third throw in 3 plays. It's intercepted. And the Tigers are going the other way. A.J. Terrell with a pick six. And backpedaling Lawrence flips it open. Wide open. Justin Ross off and running. The Alabama native wins the foot race. And Clemson strengthens its grip on this championship game.
Wow, gut punch by Clemson right there.
And now, the Morgan Thomas Show, brought to you by Black's Tire Inc.
Hello and welcome again to the Morgan Thomas Show, Season 1, Episode 15. We are live again for the third time tonight. Again, more technical difficulties. I'm sorry that it happened again, but thank you for hanging with me and for supporting the show even through our trials and tribulations here tonight. We have a great show for you. I hope you enjoyed the new intro. I spent this week working on the new intro clip to bring the show on, and we have a special guest tonight, and his name is Alan Adams. I'm going to bring him on here in a minute, but before we do that, let me talk about tonight's sponsor. Tonight's show is brought to you by Black's Tire Inc. in Westminster, South Carolina, family owned and operated since 1971. If you need new tires, brakes, alignments, tire repair, or just looking for a friendly professional to answer your questions, stop by Black's Tire Inc., located 1415 East Main Street, Westminster, South Carolina. Give them a call, 864-647-9292, and check out their website in the show comments pinned to this episode. Thank you again for joining us. Let's just jump right into it. Got a special co-host tonight. Alan, welcome to the show.
Yeah. Hey, man, it's good to be back again.
Well, yeah, for the third time. As you probably, some of you who are already watching the previous show know that we had some audio issues. I believe it was with my computer because we practiced for 5 or 6 times on this to make sure that it would work. And of course, when it goes live, when you need it to work the most, it didn't work. We practiced the video issues. And of course, it worked all the time and then it didn't work when we needed it the most. And now there was a little bit of an accident that happened during the show. Someone, I won't name names, may have placed a laundry basket next to the power outlet that carries, that everything is plugged into for the internet and the Wi-Fi and the router and everything. So I lost internet connection. I won't name names, but we lost internet connection. So what can go wrong will go wrong, Alan. This is, I don't know. I don't even know what to say anymore, man.
Seriously. I mean, you start talking about trash, and that's exactly where the connection went, right in the trash. Yeah, we'll get back on track here soon.
Forget the trash story. If you missed it, if you got it live, you got it live. Thank you. But if you missed it, I'm sorry. We're going to skip that. The better story is that the laundry basket knocked us offline temporarily, though. But they're not going to stop us. And I think that laundry basket may have been colored garnet. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. But welcome to the show, those of you who have joined again, because you're awesome like that. Matt, Dodie, Debbie, Joey as well, Mary Beth, Chris, I'm sure Dennis, Audrey, thank you so much. And Mark, 2 Marks, thank you for joining. Xander, Tanya, wow, we've got a ton of people tonight. Thank you for the support and working through it with us. Chris says 5 times a charm. Well, hopefully we don't have to do this for a 5th time, because we're professionals here. And we take this very seriously. And, if our live feed doesn't get loaded, then we don't get paid. So that's how important it is. And we know that you guys care about the show so much that you would hate for us to not have a show on Wednesday night. So we wanted to make sure, really, to plug the Wi-Fi router back in. But Alan, so again, to introduce yourself one more time, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you wanted to join the show as a co-host going forward.
Well, like we talked about before, man, it's all Clemson all the time with me, with you. There's nothing I'd rather talk about. Nobody I'd rather talk about it with. And for those of you who are wondering, where is my hat? Morgan will not let me wear it on this show. He thinks I have to be professional on this show. If I say stupid things, it's because I don't have my hat. My hat is my essence. Y'all know this. So I can't take any responsibility for that.
Yeah, well, you got better hair than me, so I mean, get over it. You don't need to wear a hat. I thought about wearing my Clemson hat just to throw you off, so that you're like, what? What is he doing wearing a hat? And I told me not to, but just to kind of give you a little backstory, we started this show back in December, and I kind of talked to Alan about this back then, but a lot of things didn't work out. As you know, we both have full-time jobs, and so things were kind of, shaky on when we could do the show. I started on Tuesday nights, and then I did Thursday nights, and then I went to Wednesday nights to try to make it all work for me and my schedule, and, with Wednesday night church and, with my full-time job. So had a lot of things going on to get the show to work at this time. And Alan as well needed to have the right time to be able to join. And so Wednesday night at 8:30 worked out for us. So hopefully we can continue it going until the season. That's the plan, is to continue the 8:30 p.m. Eastern time every Wednesday night throughout the rest of this year, going into the season. Obviously, it's the off season right now, so we got a lot of things going on building up to college football and hopefully another run for the Clemson Tigers to go to the national championship. So that's what we're looking forward to. But right now, we've got a lot of basketball, a lot of spring practice things going on. And so that's what we wanted to really get started talking about tonight. And Alan, so I'm just going to put your feet to the fire, man, and let us know what is the first thing you want to talk about tonight?
Well, I mean, we might as well start with the Wichita State game, right? Go ahead and close the book on that. It closed the book on the season for the Tigers, a disappointing season. Fell way short of expectations with 4 seniors, starters coming back. I mean, it was just a rough season. Again, I mean, I was at the game with my parents, and we shot, 14%, I think it was, from three-point line and less than 30 from the field. You're just not going to win any games that way. You could see some visual frustration with Elijah Thomas. I'd like to kind of get your thoughts on Thomas and what you saw from him. I didn't like what I saw. I saw him get frustrated at times when they didn't get it to him in the post immediately. Kind of led to him kind of taking a break on defense, it looked like to me. And, of course, he had the foul at the end of the game, the technical foul, which I think was at least his second, if not third, of this whole season. Just kind of silly fouls that put Tigers in a bad position and obviously ended up losing the game.
Now, you told me you went to the game, right?
Yes.
So I didn't get a chance to go to the game. I watched it on television. But, Elijah Thomas has been a big concern for me all year. I mean, he's a senior on the team, and obviously he's really under Marquise. If Marquise Reed wasn't on the team, he'd be the best player on the team, and he's one of the highest scoring in history for Clemson. So I can't say that he's necessarily a bad player by any means, but he does seem to get very frustrated very quickly, and that's what's always bothered me about him this season has been, man, when they need him the most, he goes and tries to steal the ball from a point guard and gets a reach in, a tic-tac reach-in foul when they needed it against NC State in the ACC tournament. He gets a foul and gets fouled out, lets the guy, that opens up the door for the guy to drive in and score in the last minute and get that, well, not really score, but he got the foul, So he wasn't down low to protect that because he wasn't on the court. And that's what frustrated me. And that's what I was recently on 105.5 The Roar with the Mark Childress Show. And I said, hey, the key is obviously Marquise Reed has to be himself, which, from three-point range, he really wasn't. But he's not really known to be a three-point killer. But he did have a ton of points like he always does. But then Elijah Thomas, like I said, he didn't foul out, but he definitely seemed to be very frustrated. I felt like it seemed like after watching the show or watching the game, it seemed like that they were fighting uphill the whole time. What do you think?
They were definitely. Wichita State, obviously they've been a tournament team, very athletic, very well coached. They like to get after you on defense, and they did a good job. Obviously, like I said, the free throw percentage was not good. The field goal percentage was terrible. The 3-point percentage was even worse. So they do a good job. They're a well-coached team. Now, they weren't the Wichita State, of old this year, but I still thought they were going to give Tigers a little bit of trouble. Unfortunately, I was right.
Well, they actually turned around and beat Indiana. I believe that's today or yesterday. So they went on and won the next game. Wichita State looked really good. Obviously, they have McDuffie, who is so good at getting offensive rebounds, sneaking in, getting behind guys, just out of nowhere, getting that offensive rebound and, putting it back up against the glass and scoring. And then he's really good at shooting a three. He kind of has that body of a Jerron Blossom game kind of. He's kind of, mid-sized guy, not super tall, but I feel like Wichita State has a great chance of winning the entire thing, to be honest with you. The way that they played against Clemson and the way they continue to play. I think they have obviously they're really tall and very well disciplined. A lot more disciplined, in my opinion, than Clemson was, having three seniors on the court, minus Shelton Mitchell, which was a big debate with me on some of the Tiger boards. Is it even a big deal that Shelton Mitchell was not on the court? Well, in my opinion, he's frustrated me with his terrible shooting percentage all year. So, and he turns the ball over. He was turning the ball over a lot at the beginning of the ACC conference schedule. So, what do you think? Did it really matter that Mitchell was on the court or not?
Well, if you're talking about this year's Shelton Mitchell, no, not really. He's been injured all year. He's been playing through that injury. We found out that from Brad Brownell. His knee's just he's had several injuries with his knee, and he's just kind of had a tough time coming back from it. Last year, he played really well when at the end of the season. He was shooting pretty well from three-point line, and of course, he's a great distributor of the ball. It did not come together for him this year. He struggled all year, really never could get a shot going from the three-point line. I think he had maybe one decent game near the end of the year, but I don't think it made much of a difference. Clyde Trapp has actually done a pretty good job in his absence, and it's actually probably going to serve the Tigers better off in the long run anyways, because he'll be the man next year.
Yeah, when I look at Dabo and his example, and I hate to go to this because everybody's like, well, Dabo's so successful. Why isn't Brad Brownell so successful? And they always use Dabo. And so, obviously Dabo is the standard, of excellence, which is, wonderful to say and be able to have him as a Clemson Tiger. But a lot of people have really ridiculed Brad Brownell, I think unfairly, in the case of not being able to recruit the right players. And some people say, oh, well, we just don't pay people enough, don't pay the players, or we're not poaching from AAU, we're not doing deals with Adidas in the back room, But I actually disagreed with that on the boards because if you look at his record over the past 3 recruiting cycles, it's not really been that bad. Now, he did have a bad season where he got Scott Spencer and the guy didn't even play a game at all, and that was like his only recruit that year. So that was kind of tough, and that's why I felt like he had to start saying, okay, I need to start looking at the transfer market and see what I can do. And really, he hit on the transfer market. Elijah Thomas, 4-star, one of the best players that they've had, right? Marquise Reed, not ranked, not a star at all, but ended up being really a star for them. Shelton Mitchell, 4-star, right? I think Javon White was a 4-star or a 3-star, and so he's been able to get I believe, decent players from the transfer market. And also, he's been able to get recruits that are 4-star recruits too. So what do you say when people say, well, he just can't recruit and we need to get a new coach because he can't recruit?
Well, I'm not going to say he can't recruit. I think he's done a little better with his recruiting. I know Marty is going to cringe listening to all this. But and like you said, the basketball recruiting is a dirty, dirty business. I mean, the fans, I think, sometimes need to be careful with what they wish for. I mean, yeah, we can hire Will Wade and we can get all those recruits, but then you're going to end up in the news. So, I mean, there's something to be said for winning the games, of course, but I think at Clemson especially, the way Dabo's done things, they want to make sure they win the right way. And I don't think you're ever going to end up in the news doing anything wrong as long as Brad Brownell's coaching. It's one of the reasons I support him and hope he gets it turned around. But it's a tough thing to do. I mean, you got to think he recruited Gabe DeVoe, and I think Gabe DeVoe averaged over 30 points a game in high school. I mean, he just lit it up, and he didn't do anything at Clemson until his senior year, really. And he was on fire all year. It's one of the main reasons we made a sweet run to the Sweet 16. I mean, but it takes a while to get there sometimes, and some of them never get there. So it's a hard thing to translate that from the high school game to the college game, no doubt about it.
It seems like it. I mean, if you look at next year's basketball team, you've got Trey Jamison, 4-star, 7-foot center. You got John Newman, which to me, I mean, love you, John. I'm glad you're a Tiger, but you're that hair, man, is just goofy. Just goofy. Seeing him run around the court, it does seem, I'm just not really impressed with him yet. It seems like he's very young, and he doesn't really seem like he contributes that much when he's on the court. So, I'd like to see more maturity and growth from him on the court and some productivity, more than maturity, I guess, productivity. Just because he kind of look goofy, doesn't mean that his hair's goofy, doesn't mean that he's not mature, but definitely more productivity from a scoring standpoint. Amir Sims is a 4-star recruit forward. He's going to be on the team next year. One of the two returning start, I guess you could say returning starter of Clyde Trapp. We'll say Clyde Trapp's a returning starter. But Amir Sims, 4-star forward, and he, if you look at the box score, he doesn't really contribute scoring-wise, not at least this year much. But, I mean, some of that could change, obviously, with Reed out or gone. Hunter Tyson, I don't know much about him, another 4-star forward. Malik William, who initially played time in 2017-18 season, he's a 4-star forward, but he's had to deal with, I think, concussion issues this year, and he hasn't. I didn't see he logged any minutes this year. So a lot of youth for sure. Now there's one guy that not a lot of people know about. He's not really being talked about, at least from the fan base, and that's Jonathan Berry. I want to say Berry. Forward. I apologize if that's not the right way to say it, but he's a transfer from UNC Asheville, and he sat out this year, but the year before he had 18 points per game. So he's another forward. I believe that there are some articles out there that are saying that he's going to be a star for Clemson coming into next year. I believe he only has 1 year left, but he was actually one of their leading scorers towards the end of the season with UNC Asheville 2 years ago. So you got a proven scorer there, I guess you could say, and then some experience with Sims and Trapp. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom. What do you think?
Right. Well, you got Matt asking in the comments down there if we're going to go to the transfer market to get another pure shooter. I doubt it very seriously. I think we're bringing in two really good guys with Chase Hunter and Alamir Dawes. Now, granted, they're freshmen, and you know how freshmen are sometimes. Sometimes they're able to contribute right away. Sometimes it takes a few years. They tell you that, Hunter Tyson can really shoot the ball. We haven't seen that much in games yet. He's hit a few here or there, but he's got a long way to go with his shot. I think the tools are there, but maybe just getting him some more experience. And like you said, Jonathan, I call it Bear. I call him Jonathan Bear, but I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name or not. But apparently he can really fill it up too, so I'm anxious to see what we have.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even include those guys, really. There's the 2 4-stars you got. He's from Newark, New Jersey, Alamir Dawes, 6'2" guard, and then Chase Hunter, more of a shooting guard, 6'3", 4-star from Atlanta. So if you look at the history, I told people, I said, if you look at it over the past 3 cycles, or I think it's 3 or 4 cycles, he's had 9 4-star recruits, including those transfers. So the argument that you're saying, that fans are saying, oh, well, he can't recruit, get rid of him, scratch that, guys. We got to move on from that. the other argument that I didn't get to say on the radio show that I really want to hit home to the Clemson fans, because it really annoys me, is those people, and there's not many of them, but those Clemson fans that say, oh, well, the ACC is just too tough. We're always going to be mediocre. We're never going to be able to be more than just an average team. Well, when we were in high school, Clemson was an 8-8 football team, maybe a 7-9 football team, run, punt, or run, punt, right? They didn't really do much of passing. It was kind of boring. Travis Zachary, was about the only player that I even remember back then, really, in the late 90s, early 2000s. Got a little better in the 2000s, right? But, there were plenty of times where Clemson was an average team looking up at Florida State saying, oh, I wish that we were in the Coastal Division. I wish we were not, having to play Florida State every year. And so if you think about it, that's kind of what the team, further down I-20 says as well. Oh, well, it's just a difficult conference. We got to go through the gauntlet all the time. Now, I will say, before any of my Garnet friends get mad, this schedule this year has been ranked number 1 strength of schedule for Carolina, because they unluckily drew Alabama and Texas A&M this year, and Florida's better, and Georgia's better, and Missouri Tigers have Kelly Bryant, which is going to be really bad. Let's just say, I hope Kelly Bryant beats the team with another Tigers team, because that would be really cool. But anyways, back to what we were talking about. So obviously, you can't say Brad Brownell is a bad recruiter. You can't really say that, oh, it's just because we're in a tough conference, because that doesn't show that we're trying to grow, that we're trying to improve. That just says, oh, we're trying to stay who we are. It's the outside. They always say in these leadership books and the positive coaching books, it's not about what the outside factors, right? It's what you put into it, right? And you'll get out what you put in. And so sitting here talking, oh, well, we'll never be successful because of Tobacco Road or because everybody pays all their players is just another excuse.
Yeah. I understand that argument for sure. And, let's be honest, he was right in the thick of it, at least in their opinion, with Zion Williamson and Josiah James, which were 2 5-star guys. One went to Tennessee and one went to Duke, and you can see what Zion Williamson is doing in the tournament. An elite athlete, if, Brownell happens to land one or two of those, or, one of those guys, there's no telling what the Tigers could do. I don't really think recruiting is the problem. It can be, when you have other people paying players that, it can take away the pool that you're eligible to get, so it lessens your chances of getting those guys you're looking for. But he's done a pretty good job recruiting. I really don't know where the issues are. I know he just recently got, some new facilities. I'm sure that's helped pick up recruiting a little bit in the past couple of years, and I hope it continues in the future. But, yeah, the conference being tough, yeah, it's a tough conference, and that's a good argument to be made. But in the end, you can get there. It's just sometimes you got to take it a little slower than you might want to. It's easy for Dabo. Dabo jumped into the ACC. And like he said at the Prowling Ground in Columbia the other night, the ACC is easy, right? That's what everybody keeps telling me. But in basketball, it's a whole different story. So it's a lot of good teams out there, a lot of quality teams, and it's going to take a little bit longer to get where we want to go, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I don't think it's impossible, like some of the naysayers are saying, but that makes a good point. He did spend a lot of time with Zion Williamson, and some people say, well, he shouldn't have done that. But all signs pointed that his family was interested in Clemson and what opportunities that he could have there. To me, obviously he's a great player. Colin Cowherd is saying that the Lakers should even trade LeBron James of all people just to get Zion Williamson, because he's young and he's good and he's got a better future than LeBron, the best player. So obviously he's a great player that Clemson did not get. Another player that a lot of people are saying in the boards is the Morant guy from Murray State. Apparently he's from the upstate or from South Carolina, the area, and so there's some rumors out there that Brad Brownell didn't even recruit him. And to be honest with you, how many basketball players are there? I feel like that it's not as easy as football. There's a ton of football players for sure too, but I don't know, man. There's just a ton of basketball players, and basketball is just so hard. I feel like when I watch tape of basketball players, I'm like, well, when it comes to film, most of the time they put up their best shots anyways, so you've got to actually go to all these games like Rory Williams was talking about recently, he and his wife go to all these games when they're in high school to just figure out and scout. Same thing with Dabo. He spends a lot of time bringing players in to the Elite Junior Day and to the cookouts so that he can actually see them in person, because, you know, you can't really tell from film alone. But moving on over, before we move on to spring practice, we'll put basketball out of the way. And we'll move on to spring practice real quick. But hey, before that, I skipped this because I wanted to talk about Clemson specifically. But Alan joined me in the NCAA bracket, so I don't know how your bracket is doing. Let me know in the comments how your bracket is doing so far. Mine's not busted. I actually had a terrible first round. So I went 20 for 32 in the first round. But then in the second round, I hit 15 out of 16 teams in the second round. Only team I missed was Wisconsin. Now, Allen is in first place as of right now, and he hit 28 for 32 in the first round and 13 of 16 in the second round. So I'm hoping that I can make my recovery. I may not be, at the top of the board. If you go look at our standings right now, I'm actually kind of towards the bottom. But the only positive of that is that proves to you that I'm not a cheater. So even though it's my show, I'm letting everybody else do better than me so I can prove to you that it's fair. I obviously could have changed my picks, but I'm not that kind of guy. All right, so that should know. If you didn't get into the pool this year, we'll have it one next year, I'm sure. But enjoying that. Thank you for those guys who have joined the pool. And Alan, good job so far joining the pool. And before we go into spring practice, let me give shout-outs to people who are here now. Dennis, welcome to the show. Aunt April, Keith. Not going to talk about the Crimson Tide tonight, Keith. Sorry. Carrie, Michaela, Nick, Jason, Kyle, welcome to the show. Lots of comments. Mark, third Mark of the night. Tons of Marks joining the show. Heather, Travis, Sharon, Brandon, Natalie, Josh, thank you. Welcome to the show. Thank you for the support. Tons of comments. Alan, I'm going to have to let you talk so I can read some of these comments. We've got tons of comments. If you don't... if you
go ahead and read the comments. I'm getting cheating references here on the bracket. Like I've cheated with my bracket. Listen.
Oh, okay.
I'm better than almost anybody in the country, okay? Everybody put Duke and UNC in the final. And I have Duke playing Gonzaga and UNC playing Tennessee, actually, which is not looking really great right now. But they're all still alive. And I said, you know what? My head tells me Duke and UNC are going to meet for the championship. And my heart says, there's no way you can put those two teams in the championship. I just can't do it. And so I have Gonzaga beating Tennessee for the national championship. I'm hoping – I've rolled with the Zags before and they've let me down, so I'm hoping they pull something out this year. With the bracket scoring, I told you I don't like the way the bracket scored.
Oh, come on.
I don't like the double points.
Come on.
So, whatever. I was really hoping for the UCF win the other night against Duke. I was willing to sacrifice a Final Four team to knock Duke out of contention.
You just about landed every underdog, which in my bracket, as Alan was talking about, I have like 1 point for the first round, then 2 points for the second round, 4, 8, 16, 32. So that's how it goes. It grows as we go further in. Then you get 25 extra points for getting in the Final Four. Then if you pick an underdog, you get extra points for picking the underdog. So Alan was hitting it all over in the first round, but going forward, he hadn't really been doing as well. Sorry, buddy. But I'm coming back. I promise you. But thank you so much for the support. If you have a second, please give us a like and a share to let your friends know about the show. Obviously, we'd love to have you join and watch the show, your friends join and watch the show, and let's talk about Clemson football and basketball is what we love, or your team. Whatever you want to talk about, put it in the comments, and we'll be sure to get it as well. Going on to spring practice. All right, so let's get this going. So I had somebody call me recently last night that said Amari Rogers didn't look good. A friend of mine who won't be named said, hey, they got to see the practice and Amari Rogers kind of hurt his knee really bad. Then it came out that morning that Larry Williams confirmed Amari Rogers tore his knee up. From what I've heard, he was going up on a jump ball against Kayvon Wallace, came down pretty awkward. It looks like right now it's a torn ACL, but it's really weird to me because it's kind of one of those situations where we love Amari, But then again, and I hate to be that way because we're not a factory. We're not Alabama. We're not just a number with no name, right? Everybody has names that we care about everybody. It was a little weird looking back how Dabo was able to be so, cheerful at his press conference. And Larry Williams even mentioned that all the wide receivers were kind of cheerful at the press conference as well. I know if I had, Rodgers who got hurt, and it was bad and he had to get carried off the field, I don't know if I would be able to put on that game face in front of the camera, but I'm sure that Dabo had his reasons. He probably talked to the guys beforehand. Who's going to fill that slot receiver role, and what does this mean for De'Aaron Kendrick? He was going to cornerback. So what do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think I don't think you mentioned this earlier. That has been confirmed by several sources. That's actually a torn ACL, so he's going to be gone. Dabo the other night, we all know how Dabo is with injuries and telling us he's going to be back in a week, but he says he's going to be back, by the season, mid-September, something like that. We'll see if that actually holds true. I certainly hope so. But in the meantime, you've got to look at Cornell Powell. I don't even know if they would slide TJ Chase there or not. I've actually heard some rumblings of DeAndre Overton actually in the slot, which is an odd position for him, to be so tall. That's not kind of the normal prototypical player you have there. But again, there's not a team in the country that's going to feel sorry for Clemson at the wide receiver position. I can promise you that. But
no.
Yeah, maybe De'Aaron Kendrick, goes back to the slot and plays a little bit. I think right now they're kind of discovering that maybe he has more value at corner. I don't know. Apparently he's been doing really, really well out there. So regardless of who they put there, they're going to do fine. I feel quite sure.
Well, and I talked about this on 105.5 The Roar with Mark Childress. If you haven't checked out Mark Childress and his show every Saturday from 9 to 11, he also has a show on Facebook as well called The Ring with Richmond Weaver. He's been a great mentor to me so far in the radio broadcast world, and I recommend that you go check him out as well. But I talked about that with him, about De'Aaron Kendrick going to cornerback, and really it kind of set up because of that gap there. They had Anthony Williams, Mario Goodrich, and I'm missing the other guy's name, Kyler McMichael. They're all been hurt and had different issues here and there, and so really they only had AJ Terrell and the new guy Sheridan Jones, who was an early enrollee. They don't have Andrew Booth, the big 5-star guy from Atlanta, because he's coming in the summer. He's still finishing out his high school year. He wasn't an early enrollee, so they really only had two legitimate guys. Brian Dawkins Jr., but he really hasn't had any field playing time as much as the other two guys. So you really only had two guys. You needed another guy out there, especially in the nickel formations. And so they went with, De'Aaron in this case, and they said he did awesome. He's a 5-star recruit, number 1 recruit from South Carolina his year that he came out. And so obviously I'd love to see him play all over the field. If you want to get more of my thoughts on that, go check out the video that was posted before this video. Where I was on the air on the radio last Saturday. Obviously, Dabo has said that Nagata and Frank Ladson, they're ready to go. They look like they're already sophomores or juniors on the field. They look even better than Mike Williams did, and that's kind of scary. He even kind of mentioned Justin Ross in that same comment of saying these two guys are ready. When I watch film on Nagata, he looks a beast. He's just amazing. And even Brent Venables can't help but drool over him. So I can see where, like Chris is saying in the comments, when you have so many wide receivers, it's kind of sad to say, well, Amari, we hope you feel better, but we really have like 8 other guys ready to go to take your spot. So I wish the best for Amari. I hope he gets better. I know that he'll get better. If you look at it, it looks about I'm saying about 7 months for Deshaun. So if you look at 7 months, what's that? October, late October, November. There's still like 3 games in November. Wofford, Wake Forest, NC State, and then there's South Carolina. There's an open date in South Carolina. I don't know if he'll be ready for November, to be honest with you. Especially coming off such a big injury like that. I'm thinking that Kendrick will have to go back to play that spot. I thought that's who they were mentioning, but they didn't even mention his name because he's been so good at cornerback.
Right. I agree with you.
So, are you worried? Another question that I kind of saw on some of the boards was: are you worried about any sophomore slumps, for the wide receiver core specifically, like, kind of Julio Jones dropped off after his first year. Sammy Watkins dropped off. So what do you think? You think Justin Ross is going to drop off as well?
I doubt it very seriously. Dabo had said that he's had 2 players come in ready to play since he's been there, Sammy Watkins and Justin Ross. And then he said the exact same thing about Frank Ladson and Joseph Nagata. So it's pretty exciting to figure out what's going to happen this year. I mean, again, there's only one ball, okay? I mean, Trevor Lawrence is throwing it, but there's only one ball, one play at a time. But somehow I have a feeling that everybody's going to get their touches. Everybody's going to get their yards. Like you said, it's 5-star on top of 5-star. But I think it's going to be a fun season. Amari Rodgers, hopefully, he's going to be able to rehab, get back for a couple games in the season so he can get ready for the playoffs.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, let's hope that he gets ready. I mean, that'll give you a little gap. Let's say they win the ACC championship game. That'll give him a little gap there to to practice for about a month or so before he has to go into the playoffs. A little bit distracted there. I had you were still talking on one screen and you're not talking on the other screen. I was like, did I interrupt Alan? I see his mouth moving, but that is the problem with being the producer / host. So sometimes I can get distracted.
No, the delays happen, and that's okay. It's a good thing. I don't know if you noticed, but we did have Andy Hazel join us down here. Andy, it's good to see you, buddy. Thanks for watching. And I don't know if you ever mentioned Lee in the beginning. My buddy Lee has been watching from the very beginning, I believe. So we want to thank all those people for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. And Josh Rowe, Will Funderburk, Perry Freeman, Jennifer Poore, thank you for joining. Kevron Harris, thank you for joining. Man, we got a ton of people tonight. I really appreciate it. And, we're going to have more. The show is just going to get better and better as we go. We're working through all the kinks here in the off season to get ready for the big season, the 2019 football season coming up in the fall with Georgia Tech starting out. Speaking of kind of what's coming up next, I wanted to kind of transition to the spring game. We're going to have, we have planned right now a Jason Priester. He's from SB Nation and Shaking the Southland. He's going to come in next, or I think in 2 weeks. Next week, I think he's going to come and he's going to talk to us a little bit about the spring game and kind of his thoughts on it. But before we talk about the spring game, let's talk about some of the big time recruits. Now, this has got me really excited. If you're a Clemson fan, any time to be excited. I know it's the off season, but if you haven't followed the recruiting trail right now, this is the best season to follow it. Now, Alan and I, we started a long time ago, back when Travis Blanks and Taj Boyd, Sammy Watkins, we started going to the recruiting wrap-up dinner. It was in Jervey Athletic Center the year we went. There's probably like 50 people there. And we got to see the players, shake hands. I got to talk to Brent Venables. We won't talk about that, Alan. We don't talk about that.
It's such a good story.
We won't talk about what I asked Brent Venables. We won't. But we got to meet the players, shake their hands. Travis Blanks, you could just tell, man, he was ready. He was going to be a great guy. He had an injury, obviously. He could have been, I believe he's still a great guy. He still works for Clemson, does a lot for their career progression, outside of football and counseling and mentoring guys and things like that. So Travis Blanks, still a great player for Clemson and now a great contributor off the field for Clemson. But we got to see Deshaun. Deshaun was the same type of player. He was, well-dressed. He was very polite. And you could just tell he was very focused and mature beyond his years, right? Even though he was very skinny, which is his only drawback, is that he was like a stick coming in and then he bulked up. And, man, he was awesome, obviously. Now killing it in the NFL. But had a lot of recruits that we followed over the years. And over the years, it's gotten better and better because of how well Dabo has done, Jeff Scott, and now Brandon Streeter. You look at it and you see, wow, we were at the athletic center with like 50 or 100 people, and it was like barbecue from nowhere, right? To now, it was like just not very good barbecue, but great small classes, right? That Dapper Dozen or whatever Dandy Dozen, whatever Dabo called that recruiting class with Taj Boyd, right? So we had that class, and we've gone to a couple since then. I went to this year's one, and it's in the practice facility, and there's probably like 6,000 people there with Chick-fil-A being fed to everyone and tons of things going on. All the trophies were there. I didn't get a chance to get a picture because it was so busy. There were so many people flocking to literally they won like 6 trophies last year, so they're all lined up there. It was amazing to go check out and to kind of see this. Man, those trophies are huge. If you haven't had a chance to see them at a buy-low or in the operations center, man, they're huge. But I got obviously got a chance to see the players again, and now we're building up to probably, if you look at it, Clemson has a chance. Dabo Swinney and company has a chance to maybe have the best recruiting class, I'm going to say, in history of his program, maybe even in history of college football, which is crazy to say because if you really look back, if you re-rank the teams, maybe that Christian Wilkins team was really probably one of the best in college football. But, Alabama fans will probably disagree with me. But there are a lot of huge names coming up. Who kind of sticks out to you that are going to be at the spring game this year?
Well, of course, first and foremost, you got a number 1 quarterback in the country, DJ Uiagalelei. A lot of people have trouble with that name. I mean, goodness gracious, I feel sorry for the announcers. But he's 6'4", 235. He's a big guy, a cannon arm, accurate passer. He can throw on the run. He's got the ability to scramble when the pocket collapses. He is a pro-style quarterback. He draws a lot of comparisons to a Cam Newton. So he's probably not quite the athlete Cam was, but he's not going to need to be with the talent they surround him at Clemson. I mean, it's going to be insane. He's going to be throwing to the best of the best. We just signed a heck of an offensive line class, or at least have that committed. So hopefully they'll all sign with us. I'm sure they will. Clemson does an amazing job at retaining their commitments. So he's going to be behind some big uglies, as people like to call them, and I think they'll do just fine.
Yeah, it's really exciting. You kind of jumped to the star of the show. So you got, obviously we talked about the star of the show. He's going to be here. He's from California, right outside of LA. DJ. Here we go. DJ Uiagalelei. All right. That's with my accent. All right. So I said it right. My accent's just off. Okay. So if you want to know exactly how to say it, I got a video posted on our page where it shows exactly how he says it because he says it. So if you want to know how to say it, say it. But I agree with you. Let's say a prayer for Dale Gilbert coming up in 2 years because he's going to have a hard time. This guy, I've heard, rumor is, and when you look at film, it's not really a rumor. Rumor is, he's 6'4", 235, number 1 overall player in this year's or the 2020 class. They say that he can throw over 70 yards like from his knee with like no problem, just kind of like leisurely tossing it 70 yards, which is amazing to be able to say. I mean, Trevor Lawrence can chuck it too down the field, but to have another one back to back right after Trevor, this is, I think, better for Clemson because if you look at it, looking back, you don't really want to overload great quarterbacks because that's kind of what Dabo got in a problem with. It's a good problem to have, right? But with the quarterback, It's not like running back where you have the Tavian Feaster who stays. But with the quarterback, or like the Trayvon Thompson who stays, right? But then you have the quarterback, man, if they don't get playing time, they're out of here. I mean, Clemson lost 5 quarterbacks last year, and because they weren't going to get playing time because they knew Trevor Lawrence, hey, I'm out of here, And so you don't want that to happen because then what happens if Trevor Lawrence gets hurt? Well, thankfully you have Chase Bryce, who was a 4-star recruit from Grayson, but you don't really have very much depth there if he gets hurt. And a lot of people felt like, obviously Kelly Bryant should have stayed, and I believe the same thing. I think he could have still contributed, and Dabo said as much too. But quarterback's really touchy because they want their playing time. I mean, everybody wants their playing time, but there's really only one spot. There's no quarterback by committee. And so I think it's better to have a little bit of a gap from Trevor to DJ because this is his recruiting class for him. So he's not going to be on the team this year. He'll be on the team next year when Trevor is a junior, right? By then he'll be a junior.
Right.
And I've noticed the thing that there's really not any argument about it either. It's Clemson, which is a by far number 1 for him, and then Oregon, but it's kind of like just not even really in the picture really. And he's mentioned day in and day out, or when they interview him, that what he loves about Clemson is that Dabo's not afraid to share his faith openly and be non-apologetic for it. And I thought that was amazing to hear from somebody because, Dabo has been under some scrutiny from places for sharing his faith as much as he does.
Sure. Yeah, and DJ knows what he's getting into. He knows Trevor Lawrence is going to be the guy, but he also knows he's going to play. I mean, just like he saw Trevor Lawrence play when Kelly Bryant was the starter, it's going to happen. He's going to get opportunities. You hope with a guy like Trevor Lawrence, you're going to be out so far ahead in a lot of these games that they're going to get DJ in the game a lot. And I have no doubt that that'll end up happening if he is truly as good as everybody thinks he is. And I'm pretty sure when he's going to visit for the spring game that this will be the first trip for his mom. He's been there with his dad. He's been there with his coaches. But let's be honest, mama gets what mama wants a lot of the time when it comes to recruiting. Sometimes mama's the biggest influence, sometimes it's the dad, but usually it's the mom. And I have no doubt that Dabo can woo mom like nobody else. So I think there's a good chance he pops at the spring game. If not, maybe in the near future. We probably have more than one pop around the spring game, if not on the spring game itself. And they're all going to be really good, 5 stars all over across the board, I think.
Yeah, if you look at it, going back to kind of what we were saying earlier, is if you really look at the nation as a whole, it's amazing because he's got the guy from LA, DJ, right? Pretty much, we're going to go ahead. Let's just say check, right? Let's just say got him, right? So then you've got 2 guys from Washington D.C. that are amazing, or right outside of Washington D.C. in Brian Breesy, or Brees, I don't know how they say Breesy. And then Anton Sampa. Those guys are outside of D.C. Anton, 6'3", 220 inside linebacker, number 1 inside linebacker. He said that he's interested in coming to the spring game. Hasn't said specifically on Twitter or anything yet, but Brian has said he's the number 1 defensive end in the nation, and he said he's coming to the spring game. When DJ said he was coming, Brian almost immediately retweeted and said, "Hey, I'm there." And so that was amazing because he hadn't come out and said it yet. And so you got the number 1 quarterback. You got the number 1 inside linebacker. You got the number 1 defensive end. Both, from opposite corners of the country, okay? And then I look at Brian. If you got to go watch film. If you haven't watched film of Brian, oh my goodness. He looks like an 18, really, I guess 17-year-old J.J. Watt already. It's amazing. The dude is huge, and nobody can stop him. I'm afraid if I was a right tackle or a right guard, I'd be afraid of that guy because he's going to bowl you over every single time. He is just wreaking havoc. He is obviously worth a number 1 overall rating. No question about it. DJ the same. Both of them have expressed that Clemson is their number 1, which is amazing to say. Anton has Clemson up high as well, kind of fighting there with Alabama. And then we've got another one as of this week who's here and says he's going to come back for the spring game. DeMarcus Bowman, who's the number 1 running back, or number 3 running back in the nation, rather, 5'11", 190 from Lakeland, Florida. Now, this is why this is a big deal. So you got big guy from LA, 2 big guys from DC. Why this is a big deal is because Bowman is from Lakeland, Florida, right there where the Gators do not lose top 5-star players from Lakeland. They do not. Now, he already has 3 friends from his last class that had already graduated high school that went, no question, to Florida. So Clemson is going to be fighting the fact that his friends or his previous teammates are already at Florida. 3 of them to count. But it's just interesting to me, Dabo's very slow playing with any commitments. He doesn't just run after anybody for no good reason. And he just doesn't go after you just because you're a big-time recruit either. He wants to get to know you. He wants to get to know your family. But Bowman has already come out and said this week, I think yesterday actually, that Clemson is number 1 for him too. So you've got number 1, top running back, number 1, Clemson's top. And linebacker, Clemson's top. Defensive end, Clemson's top. Quarterback, Clemson's top. All right. Then you've got cornerback, Fred Davis and R.J. Meekins. Both of them are top on Clemson. What do you, to me, and E.J. Williams, I didn't even put him in. E.J. Williams, a wide receiver. To me, if Dabo even lands, and Dabo has said, Clemson's never going to have a number 1 recruiting class because they don't go after quantity. They're not the factory. They're the family, right? But I know Dabo loves to play the underdog, but there's no way. If he lands half of these guys, which almost half of them had already said they want to come or have him in the number one. If he lands half of them, if somebody doesn't rank Clemson number one in the nation in their recruiting class in 2020, I'm thinking it's rigged.
And that's okay. They can rank us wherever they want as long as we get these players. It really doesn't matter to me. I mean, like you said, I think we lead for DJ Uyunglele. I think we lead for Brian Breesy. I think we lead for Fred Davis. I'm not so sure about Antoine Sampa. Obviously, he's shown some interest. Whether we end up getting him or not, I'm not sure the influences in his recruitment. I'm not really sure who that is. I don't know if it's mom or dad or anything like that. It's just I picked up some vibes there where we may or may not actually be out front for him. Like you said, DeMarcus Bowman came out and called us number one, which is great. But again, like you stated, Lakeland is a pipeline for Florida. So we're gonna have to fend off the Gators there in the long haul for sure. And of course, you mentioned the others as well, the EJ Williams, and just be another good receiver to bring on a wide receiver and I can't wait.
Yeah, it's amazing. So we talked about the basketball. We talked about the new look basketball team. We next year. Then we talked about spring practice. Now we've covered all the big time recruits. So everybody's up to date on the recruits, on spring practice, on basketball. And we're going to wrap it up. This is the last part of the show. Thank you for sticking with us. Before I go to wrap up to go into the last segment, don't forget to like and share this video. It's very important for us. Obviously, if you want to support the show, we would appreciate it by giving us some likes and share. So make sure you go hit the blue thumbs up or the red heart, and then make sure to share it so your friends can know about the show and give us a shout out. We would appreciate it, that support there. So finishing up the show, last segment, didn't have any graphics to go, didn't have any banners to go along with this because of all the issues with, the video today. But thanks for sticking with us with no graphics. But I put out a post on my page saying, if you could trade one ACC team for any other team, who would it be? Well, I posted it on TigerNet Clemson fans, and it takes a while for them to approve it. Well, they approved it 2 days ago, and it blew up my phone. Literally over 120 comments within 2 hours. It was crazy the amount of people wanting to weigh in on who should be kicked out of the ACC and who should be brought back. Now, my question was, when you look at the graphic, there's no Maryland. So, growing up with the ACC, I kind of don't like that Maryland's not there. I mean, I grew up seeing that Fighting Turtle, even though I didn't really like them that much. But I grew up, with Maryland there, and, a lot of really good games when Sammy was here, back and forth. Sammy went off that game. I don't remember what year it was. But I said, would you take Maryland back? I got an overwhelming response. No, would not take Maryland back. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. So who is the leader in the clubhouse? Can you tell me who got the most votes to leave?
All right. So good question. Well, I didn't go through and give every vote because, there was ended up being almost 200 comments. It was crazy. And a lot of people said, I wouldn't trade anybody. But then a lot of people said they would just kick out one team, kick out Notre Dame or kick out Wake Forest, lose a team and not gain a team. I mentioned that I wouldn't mind losing Wake Forest and then bringing in West Virginia. Well, that made everybody mad because they were well, we already had West Virginia and they left and they didn't pay the conference their money that they owed. And so that drew a lot of scrutiny there. They also had a lot of scrutiny from our Wake Forest fans because they were well, we're a founding member of the ACC, so, you can't kick us out. And just because we're small doesn't mean that we can't be successful. And that's true. In the past, they have been more successful, but not really recently. A lot of people did agree with getting rid of Wake Forest. But here's a couple of some of the most recent comments. So you've got Donnie saying he would trade Pittsburgh for UCF. I had a lot of people saying Pittsburgh. They just didn't really like Pittsburgh for whatever reason. I don't really mind Pittsburgh, to be honest with you. UCF, a lot of people disagreed with Donnie, saying UCF is just a flash in the pan. Hey, in the comments, let us know who you think you would trade. If you could get rid of one team in the ACC and take on one team, let us know who it would be in the comments, and we'll give you a shout out tonight. But Donnie says Pitt for UCF. I don't know. I'd like to keep Pitt, to be honest. And then Heather says just try to work to get Notre Dame consistently in the conference, not hanging by just doing 4 games. What do you think about that?
Right, and that's something the ACC is definitely trying to do. They want that Notre Dame money, which Notre Dame gets to keep all for itself right now. But hopefully they'll get left out of enough playoffs, and then they'll have to join full time, and we can get some of that money as well. You see, I'm assuming this is coming from Scott Hawkins, but it says Tanya Hawkins. He says BC out, Georgia in. So he's trying to poach one of the big timers from the SEC. He really wants to make this a competitive league.
I had a ton of people say, just get rid of, say, Wake for Alabama, like just trade the low team for the high team in another conference. But then a lot of people were commenting back on that saying, well, if you're going to do that, just move Clemson. Just trade Clemson out for, say, Vanderbilt. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't think of it that way. So that was kind of interesting to see it that way. I don't know if I'd want Clemson in the SEC. I used to think that in some ways it would be nice, but to be honest with you, look at Dabo's resume. They basically play in the SEC multiple games every single year and spanking them. Right. So they don't need to be in the SEC. I believe truly if Clemson was in the SEC, I think it would be a fight between, if they were on the East, it would be obviously Clemson, Georgia. Right. Florida, time will tell. I do think Dan Mullen's going to bring him back to glory. I do. But I feel like Florida and Georgia getting better doesn't necessarily hurt Dabo as much as it hurts Alabama, in my opinion, because just the way Dabo recruits, he's just not going. He doesn't blanket recruit 5 stars, and 4 stars only. He doesn't overcommit to his classes, knowing that he can't bring everybody on the field. So he goes after specific people who he wants on the bus to be successful, that he knows going to fit in the culture, and so I feel like that kind of gives him a little immunity there when it comes to other teams that are close, because it's kind of interesting to think Clemson, who's so close to Florida, so close to Georgia, so close to Tennessee, can be the number 1 team,
Right, exactly. And everybody's telling us to get Notre Dame full time, and I agree with you. We definitely need to do that. But what's for the hate on BC? Xander also says BC out, get Notre Dame to join full time. I don't have a problem with BC. I would be. I think I texted you back when you asked me the question. I told you Wake Forest.
It's easy to pick on Wake Forest because they're the small team. If you get rid of BC, then you still have Wake. I don't know. I guess it's okay to have a team like that. A lot of people said Georgia Tech for Georgia, just swap those 2 teams out. I heard that. Terry said that. I put down Paul had he would not trade Pittsburgh because they have 8 national championships. I didn't know they had 8 national championships. I guess it wasn't from, when I was really paying attention. maybe in his time, not my time, right? Ben said that he would trade Louisville for UCF. So a lot of people are saying UCF. Some people even said trade to the Tar Heels because they're the worst fans ever. Barry said that. Trade Tar Heels, worst, period, fans, period, ever, period. Okay. All right, we get it, Barry. So worst fans ever. I don't know much about Tar Heel fans. I know there are a ton of them from all over the world. So I don't want to get rid of a nationally known and a worldwide recognized brand like that. You got to think about the money too. You really can't get rid of the Tar Heels. I would not do that.
Yeah, that would really hurt us on the basketball side for sure. And I did just want to say before we wrap this thing up is, guys, I hope y'all understand just how much Morgan goes through for this show. He does an awesome job. Obviously, he said he couldn't get the graphics going on. We had too many technical difficulties today. But I'm sitting here. This is my first time on the show. I'm trying to read your comments and at the same time listening to what he's saying. And it's really difficult to do. He's over there talking, producing the show, putting up clips, looking at comments and responding to all you guys. He does an awesome job, and I'm just glad he's finally got me in the game and let me join him.
Well, I'm glad that I'm not talking to my wall anymore. Even though it's a nice wall and I'm going to miss him or her or whatever. But I'm here by myself, and thank you, Alan, for the kind words. Obviously, I put a lot of effort into it. A lot of people don't understand that. I do media for Verizon. So a lot of people, they just see the end result and they're like, wow, that's awesome, but you could do better, and you could do this, and you could do that, and why didn't you do this? Or great job at this, great job at that. A lot of people don't really understand that, and even I didn't understand that, man, just the amount of work, so much respect that I have for like Mickey Plyler and even Walt, who got to say Walt, and Kwok and Kelly, and even guys like Mark and Rich. Richmond. A lot of respect for those guys because when you decide to be a sports broadcaster, it really kind of takes up your time, like when you don't want it to, because you got to really stay up to date on all the news. Anything could happen at any time, just like the Amari Rogers stuff. Man, I was getting phone calls at the 10 o'clock at night. Hey, did you hear? I heard something happened at practice. Do you know what happened? I'm like, man, I don't know. But and then there's constantly reading the news. But one thing that's really kind of something that I started to learn is that it's helped me learn other teams as well. A lot of my friends at church have said, well, I would only watch if you were talking more about Georgia. Well, it's coming. Just believe me that when you start to talk about Clemson, you really start to get into the opponents, and when you start to get into the players and the coaches, start to follow the recruiting process, it's really important to follow the other teams as well too. So it's a lot of work. So on Monday night, we usually do our script, which write out not really full script, just kind of talking points or any kind of stats that we're going to go over. Not really word for word anything, just kind of bullet points. But that's just Monday night. That doesn't mean that the research is all week. It does not stop. Tuesday, I do the graphics. And then obviously Wednesday, we have the live show. And that's where it all comes together or doesn't come together. Just depends. Depends on how Facebook wants to treat me or how that darn clothes basket wants to treat me tonight. So let's give a special shout out to that clothes basket for cutting us off the air for a second. We hear you. We know that you are a Clemson fan as well. Stephanie, welcome to the show. Scott, welcome to the show. That's about it. We had a ton of comments, 93 comments, 20 likes and loves. And remember to share the videos so that your friends can also know about the Morgan Thomas Show and so we can grow the engagement here. We'd love to get it up to as high as we can get it. It's just awesome to see how much it's grown from when I was in front of a camera with just 5 people watching to now over 15 people watching, 16 people watch, 17 people watching tonight. So a lot of people watching tonight. So thank you so much for the support. And Alan, thank you for joining me. I look forward to doing more of this. This is the plan, is to not only have me and Alan going at it, talking back and forth as kind of a host, co-host kind of thing, but also have some special guests. So we're going to start having interviews from other people who are in the Clemson Tiger athletic, realm. Obviously, next week we've got a guy from SB Nation that's going to come on and talk about spring practice. Spring practice starts on April 6th. So if you go to spring practice, hey, take a look out for me and Alan. We'll be there. But it's not like when we were younger, Alan. It's not like you have the pick of whatever seat you want. Nowadays, you got to get there early, and you got to get you a seat because it's packed.
Oh, yeah, it is, definitely. And before we get out of here, obviously they join near the end of the show, but I do want to say hey to Tim Burris. Thank you for watching, and Bailey, of course. It's great to have you guys here. We start at 8:30 to 9:30 on Wednesday nights. Please remember that and watch us in the future. Like I said, Morgan, we got a good show next week going on about the spring game. We have a special guest, Jason Priester, I believe it is, going to join us. So we're going to have a lot of fun, talk a lot of spring game and what to expect from the Clemson Tigers, which we hope is another run at the national championship. Morgan, it's been awesome. I appreciate you having me, man.
All right, man. I'll see you next week. And as always, Clemson fans, we will see you at the top of the hill.